Okay, I'm just going to give a brief update on some work that the Midwest Partnership has been doing with their data task force. The longtime chair of the data task force was Francis Toddy with Iowa DOT, and he was a real champion to this work they're doing and led the group for a number of years. Francis retired at the end of last year, and so I agreed to make this presentation on their behalf. But this is really an outreach effort from their partnership to you and try to see if there's interest in you being involved in this effort. So a little bit of background. There was recognition by the Midwest Partnership that there was value in sharing quantity and cost information on these treatments between agencies. And so back in 2016, they started out by collecting this information in an Excel spreadsheet. And so they recognized after a period of time that there were some limitations in having the data that way. A lot of the agencies were supplying information in any number of units. Some would turn in their costs by lane mile, others would use square yards, square feet. Some would report their chip seals as gallons of emulsion and tons of aggregate. And so it was really hard to have a standardized value for them and make quick comparisons between these agencies. And so back in 2020, they enlisted the help of NCPP to develop an online database. Really, the rationale for having this database was one, that it creates a regional average cost for each treatment. You can get a sense of across the states in your region what is an average cost that's being paid to put these treatments down. And also as an agency, if you're looking to start a new treatment and get a sense of what that costs, where would you go to do that? And so having this database out there for agencies that are looking to expand their toolbox seemed to be a good tool to share that information. And so this database has been put up on the TSP2 website. A few of you may have come across it if you've been out on the page recently, but it's under the technical tab. And there is a link there for the treatment quantity and cost database. This is the landing page within the database. We have a main data table that has all of the entries that have been made. Right now, I think we've got about 160 or 170 entries they've made going back to 2016. There's a lot of information I'll get to in a second. We have a number of columns that go off to the right of the page and have their data entry. And then from there, there's a number of queries they've made that I'll get to in a minute that help refine that data. From this data table and the queries that are out there, all of this information can be taken and downloaded into Excel or CSV format so that agencies can use and refine that data to fit their needs. They can use it for reports or other information within their agencies. Start out by collecting lane mile information for each of these treatments. From there, we also collect project cost per lane mile, so we have information as total cost, and we'll capture those other aspects of a project, your mobilization, your traffic control, your striping, anything else that you might include in that project, and it's broken down to a per lane mile cost. And we also capture material cost per lane mile, so it's stripping out all of those other things so you can look at just what the material itself costs. And from there, the group had made the decision to standardize everything down to a material cost per square yard. So we've got a real way to compare that data that they have for each of these treatments. We collect, you'll see a quantity one field here in the units they use. We collect we have the option to collect a quantity two field, and that way people are able to supply the data in the format they have. They don't have to go and pull all that project information together and do a bunch of calculations and then supply the data. So if the agency is capturing their information in terms of gallons of emulsion and tons of aggregate, they can supply it that way if that's easiest to do it. If they have their information by lane mile or square yard, they can put it in that way. And the way this is working is we ask for lane miles placed, and we also ask for a lane width, so we can calculate an area, and from there we're using that area value to back calculate the cost. So we also collect treatment service life and life extension. who the work was performed by, whether this was contractor, agency, or a combination of the two. And then any comments they have to the treatment, maybe they want to specify the type of emulsion they're using, type of aggregate, anything like that. And then we also have a field for contact information for that agency. So if you have questions about their data, you can reach out to somebody and contact them directly and get more information. At the top here, you'll see a couple links. One is to the database report info and terminology and the data entry form. So I'm going to go into the data entry form. This is what it looks like. It's a number of fields. We tried to use drop downs to the extent we could, that you could just click on the treatment you're doing, click on the agency you're from, so you can get through this data entry as quickly as possible. We also have a report information and terminology section. It covers what those terms we're using within the database, as well as a definition of each type of treatment. We know there's some regional differences in terminology used, so we've defined those as well. Here's the reports available. Right now, all our queries are based on treatment, but there's the possibility, if this expands and other regions get involved, that you may want to look at information on a regional basis, or have some other way to query that data that's out there. As I said, we've got 160 or 170 records right now. That doesn't include the data entry that the Midwest is going to do for this year. They typically meet in the spring and put that data in. They do it once a year and have some discussion on any of the information they're seeing. So this is available. It can be done at any time. It doesn't have to be done on a schedule, but this is a good way to give folks a reminder of the need to put it in for each cycle. You know, one of the limitations we're having right now, this data is supplied annually, but obviously this year we've seen a lot of significant cost changes over prior years, so maybe the information doesn't have as much value right now as it would in an ordinary year-to-year basis, but we hope over time we'll get back to more stable costs and we can get more value out of recent cost trends. You may have noticed in the report that there was a reference to exchange rate between US dollar, Canadian dollar. We have 3 Canadian provinces in the Midwest that are part of this, and so it's actually set up that you can supply data in either US units, metric units, and you're entering in either US dollars or Canadian dollars. This system is doing the calculations to convert all of that over. And so those Canadian provinces can supply data that's then in US units and US dollars, and the same for them, that they can see it in Canadian dollars and metric units as well. So there's a lot of value even between the provinces and the states. And so obviously Nova Scotia is not here this week, but they are part of the partnership, and so this is an opportunity for them to be involved in this as well. And so that's really all I have on this. I just want to mention that I know we're going to have some discussion of the task force, and this is an opportunity as a group, if you want to be involved in this data collection effort as a regional partnership, to do so, and the Midwest would be happy to have you be involved in this database. If there's other treatments that aren't covered in the database now, maybe your high performance thin overlay may be considered different than a typical thin overlay, or add things like mastic or things like that. I think there's opportunities there to have some dialogue with the Midwest and see if there's a need to make a few changes to what exists now. So I just want to leave you with that and have a little discussion. If you decide as a group that you want to pursue having or taking part in this database, it's not something that obligates any state to participate. I mean, it's completely voluntary. Most of the states in the Midwest do participate, but it's not a mandate by any means. So any questions about anything in the database?
One of the things that we talked about in the state reports yesterday was that every state kind of looks at their cost and their contracts a little bit different and includes a different amount of incidentals. I can speak for New Hampshire. We include a significant amount of incidentals in our contracts. How are you making sure that the cost per unit is an accurate representation across states if the contracts can vary so drastically.
As I said, they've tried to leave it as really a project cost and include whatever items that may be part of that. I mean, some get into, I know in the southeast somebody mentioned that they include guardrail as part of their project costs. And they can include that there, and then that material cost is really meant to be, strictly the product itself. And we're using the material cost for that square yard value that we have, so we're not getting into those other items. But that's something that really just gets discussed between the members of the partnership. And so if you feel there's a way differently you want to approach that, you can have some discussion about it. We have the comments field to sort of, people can enter in any information they have on those projects so that other states are aware of.
I definitely think the information is really valuable. I just know that, if you include the guardrail item and you're not just quantifying the unit cost per ton in your bid price, you could have drastically varying amounts, or if you're trying to cover like number of lane miles or vice versa.
I probably saw it on the website, but I haven't spent a lot of time diving into it. Does it show in relation to the size of the project, the quantities on the project itself to get that cost? Does it have a min, max, and average or any of that kind of stuff, or is it just a single number for a single contract?
Well, it's an aggregated, they'll put all of their contracts into one entry. Now, because we're capturing by lane width as well as number of lane miles, if you've got varying lane widths on your project, I mean, we talked about either coming up with an average and reporting that, or making entries. Maybe if you've got 12-foot lanes for this project and another one's 11-foot lanes, make another entry for that. But thank you.
The preceding was produced by the National Center for Pavement Preservation. More information can be found on the web at pavementpreservation.org. Additional support provided by Michigan State University.